Well, welcome to another episode of Monday Moments, the show in which we take a deeper dive into the sermon that was preached yesterday, the Sunday before. With me today is Pastor Dennis. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. We're excited. So before we dive into this week's episode, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you want more of this content brought directly to you and be notified every week. And that being said, let's get straight into it. We concluded our Prelude series this past Sunday, and we shifted our focus a little bit more specifically towards Sabbath, which I thought was a fantastic sermon. And it's one of these topics that, for me, having been here as long as I have been, I still find myself gaining new insights about Sabbath and needing to be reminded that Sabbath is really a state of being, and that's really what it's intended to do. Now, Jesus did things on the Sabbath, but it's really meant as almost like a mindset of being with God and being in His presence, going all the way back to the garden. And so I think my first question that I wanted to ask you is, you preach on Sabbath and teach on Sabbath differently than anywhere else I've ever heard or been to. And I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about that. Why is that?
Yeah, I think many years ago now, decades ago, I would read in Hebrews, there remains yet a Sabbath for the people of God. And I would think, well, I thought that Sabbath was a Jewish construct. It was part of the Jewish faith, and certainly, you know, the Jewish Sabbath is on Saturday, and we worship God on Sunday, and all of these kinds of things. I never could really get my mind wrapped around what does this change. But as I really began to understand the intent of Sabbath, if you just take all of the structure that's around that word, whether it's meeting in a synagogue, or whether you meet in a church, or whether it starts in the evening, like for the Jewish people, or whether it starts in the morning for the Gentiles. You know, as soon as you strip it all away, it really does come down to something that God actually created. He created rest on that seventh day, and it ended when Adam and Eve sinned. And so I began to see that this was not just part of the Ten Commandments or part of the Jewish the Jewish way of life, which it is. It's very important. In fact, one of the single most important things to Judaism to this day is the Sabbath. But I realized that it ended, that rest ended, which is the word Sabbath or Sabbat. It ended when sin entered the world.
Wow.
Adam was told, from now on, instead of living in a garden, you're going to live among thorns and thistles. You're going to work, and you're only going to be able to produce anything from the sweat of your brow. In other words, rest, which was the garden model, became toil in the sin model. So when Jesus shows up and he makes that great declaration, "Come unto me, all you who are" what? "Weary and heavy laden, worked to exhaustion, and I will give you rest." It was not just another sermon topic, if you will. It wasn't just another parable, as if Jesus could just have another parable, but it was a great declaration. I mean, it was a tremendous shift in the whole world system, where God was saying that not only did he come to restore our relationship back to him, but he also came to restore his order, which was rest. And so it became very important to me. Why? Because for years I hadn't been at rest. You think of having to work out your salvation, which is a bad translation of that particular passage. Not the words, but the idea that I've got to work at this. And the Lord came and said, "Come unto me, and I'll give you I'll give you rest. And it just really got underneath me.
Yeah.
So that's why it became so important to me. And that's why I think it's so important, a lost truth.
Yeah.
You know, the funny thing is, you have the 10 Commandments, and nobody disagrees
Yeah.
with the 10 Commandments. When it says don't murder, we go, well, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't steal, don't covet,
Yeah.
don't do all of these things. Don't lust after another person's good. Don't do those things. But then when it comes to remember the Sabbath, it's the one commandment we've forgotten.
Yeah. Almost like it's a suggestion.
It's a suggestion. It's Jewish. It's not for us. It's, you can go do all kinds of things, but still rest. And,
Sure.
And yet, no, there are some real constraints there that God put in. And I think he put them in there for a purpose.
Yeah.
Not to get under the law.
Right.
But to understand that we are at our best when we take regular times away to rest with God and to rest with God with others. It's another part of intimacy with God and intimacy with others.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's encouraging to me to know that when I think about that verse in Hebrews chapter 4, it says, there remains a Sabbath. It's Jesus didn't just come for one time. It's today there remains a Sabbath. Make every effort to enter into that rest. And it's something that I can experience on an ongoing daily basis. It's honestly, it's both an encouragement and a challenge to make sure that I don't miss out on that Sabbath rest.
Yeah, it's almost like when you look back at it, and when the Sabbath was established in Exodus, when the children of Israel came out of bondage, it was almost like God was saying, here is just a taste of the rest that is going to be.
Yeah.
Here's just a taste of it, one day a week.
Wow.
And yet I believe that Sabbath that is talked about in Hebrews is that true Sabbath, that Sabbath that says that every day, no matter what is going on, I have this peace and I have this rest in God, and I need to pursue that.
Yeah.
I don't need to just take it as, it's going to be the Sabbath, or it's going to be Sunday, or I got to go do this. No, it's a rest that God wants me to enter into and live in.
Yeah. I wonder if there was, I don't have anything to back this up scripturally, but I just wonder if there was almost this huge sigh of relief from the Jewish people hearing Jesus say, "Are you weary and heavy laden? Come to me, take my yoke upon you, and I will give you rest." If there was this sense, consciously or subconsciously, of this burdensome religion that the law had grown into at that time, and so hearing Jesus say, "My yoke is easy, my burden is light," if there was almost this sense of, yes, this is what we have needed so desperately, and at least that's what it does for me.
Yeah.
When I think about that, and getting out of the daily grind, the daily rat race and hustle, and say, I need that rest.
I finally started watching The Chosen. It seems to be the biggest deal.
Yeah.
And I think that I really, I am fascinated by how well Judaism and the culture was portrayed or has been portrayed in it. And it really is that. You see this constant working, this constant survival mode, this constant of the common people just trying to get by. How do we get by? And they had no other hope.
Yeah.
Sabbath for them was really this day, this beginning and an evening, but where they could gather together, and it was almost not just a remembering, but a looking forward. It was something that they looked for because they could rest, they could stop, they could fellowship, they could be together. There were people at Shabbat, a Shabbat meal. Strangers are always welcome to it. Things like that.
Wow.
And yet here it also contrasts the religious crowd.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily, I think that a lot of Christians have this terrible, terrible view of Pharisees, like they were all wrong and they were always evil. And I don't think it was like that. I think that there were some true seekers. It's like politicians nowadays,
Sure.
there's some ones out there that are true to form.
Yeah.
And yet you can see how when man doesn't have a relationship with God, religion always becomes this high watermark. How religious can I become? Because that would mean that God would accept me more.
Yeah.
And that's what Shabbat became. That's what it became. Sabbath became a list of do's and don'ts. It became a list of strict laws, and always it strips out the relationship.
Wow.
It always does. So I think that it's something that as we really begin to enter into it, it's important to remember that this is a gift from God.
Yeah.
And that's what the Jewish people saw it as. When the Jews came out of bondage, they had no day off. And that's what we considered a day off. No, it wasn't a day off. It was a time where they could come aside and really rest with God. I mean, can you imagine getting up and having this great a gift of manna?
Yeah.
Well, on one day a week, the manna didn't fall, but Nagelin showed up with donuts and kolache.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it was, you
Yeah.
know? And people got together and rejoiced.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah. Such a beautiful picture of what God had always intended, that intimacy and that connection and relationship with him.
Nagelins and kolaches?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll claim that as a gift from God. So I wonder, and I'll ask you this, why is this concept, this principle, this truth of Sabbath so confusing for us?
A bigger concept. The Western mind works by building boxes. We love order. We look at the Bible as this, we can stack these boxes and we can, do truth by laying it out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And yet the Bible is not a Western book. It's an Eastern book.
Yeah.
And the Eastern mind doesn't work by stacking boxes.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that. And I think that that's part of the confusion. We want to know what to do.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so what do I do?
Yeah.
And if I was to stand up and say, okay, what we do is if you're really going to get into Sabbath, you need to show up at church on time and you need to sing the songs with all your heart and you need to take notes and you need to go home and don't turn on the television. You would have a lot of people who would say, that's all I need to know and that's what I'm going to do. And then you'd have this other group of people say, no, that's not the right list. We want this list, And it becomes this idea that if we do the right thing,
Sure.
then we get the benefit.
Right.
But God comes and he says, Jesus' words, come unto me. Come unto me. I will give you rest.
Wow.
He doesn't say, come unto me and do these things.
Yeah.
He doesn't say, don't come unto me, just do what I tell you to do. You see, that even that whole idea, the reason that we struggle with it so much is because we would much rather know what to do
Sure.
than really just be what God's called us to be.
Yeah.
And once again, I think that goes not just with Sabbath, but that goes with everything. It goes with giving, with tithing. It goes with how we do our families. We want to know what do I do in order to get what I want.
Sure.
And yet, when we talk about Sabbath, Shabbat, rest with God, think about that.
Yeah.
If I could just be at rest with God, not just peace,
Sure.
not just forgiven, but at rest with God. There's a beautiful passage of scripture in the book of Psalms. It says, he gives to his beloved even as they sleep.
Wow.
He, the Lord, gives to who? Those that he not only loves, but that those that he loves deeply, the beloved.
Wow.
And when does he give it? When they rest.
Yeah.
When they rest, when they're sleeping, I mean, I use that to claim naps all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, Lord, I'm going to take a nap. Give to me. And yet there's such an enormous truth.
Yeah.
Psalm 131. O Lord, my heart is not proud, nor my eyes haughty, nor do I involve myself in great things. And that whole concept of just being a little child resting in the Father, it even goes on to say, like a weaned child leans against its mother.
Right.
So our souls do to you. And so that's the whole idea of rest.
Yeah.
Sabbath is not a day, it's a lifestyle.
Right.
And if it's one thing that I've wanted to communicate to people all through these years, is that part of the reason that we need to enter into this is because, and we need to strive to enter in, that's what Hebrews says.
Wow.
We need to strive to enter in, is because given to our own self and our own nature, we won't do that.
Mm-hmm.
But oh, how the Lord desires for us to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good. Yeah, I think that's the challenge for me is when I think through my daily, here's what I need to do, the idea of just coming to the Lord's presence is challenging for me because I think through, well, I need to spend so much time in the Word. I need to spend so much time in prayer or worship or, whatever. So this idea of coming to the Lord and being still is often challenging for me. And I don't know if that's the way I grew up. I don't know if it's a result of just kind of this Western culture, as you pointed out, being productive, all the time. But one thing I have known throughout this Prelude series or come to see is this idea of God meets us when we come to Him. There's this idea in this whether it's when we were talking about Elijah and he fled and he was in the wilderness as a result of his fear, God still met him. He just came to this place of being in God's presence. And one of the things that I've talked about with James in the past is this idea of there's a simplicity and almost like a freedom in not having to know what the next 10, 12 steps are. We just need to know what the next step is. And that next step so often starts with, come to me, come to the Lord, come into my presence, be with me, and I will give you rest. I will give you peace. And while that's challenging, it's also encouraging to know, here's where I can get what my soul and my heart and my mind really needs is that rest.
Yeah, I think that's a great concept, Travis, because again, in our Western thinking, we think, okay, if I'm just supposed to come to Him and be with Him, then that means that I'm not supposed to do these other things. Mm. And no, how about if we just added this one into the mix?
Yeah.
And I need to do Bible study. Yes, I need to pray, intercede, not just bring my own needs to God, but to bring other people's needs to God. Yes, I need to serve. Yes, I need to work.
Yeah.
But yes, I also need to look towards these times where I can just be with the Lord. Just be with Him.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean necessarily exclusive of other people. That's why Sunday morning is so important.
Yeah.
Because we're just all with the Lord together. We call it our living room, And I think that that's so very important to see that this is not just a think and do, but this adds the being into it. And it's not exclusive.
Sure.
It's not, well, okay, now we just only need to do this like it's another task. No, this is a get to, not a got to. Right. It really is.
Yeah.
And to do that, when I have all of my family over, my grandkids are all there and they're doing different things. The idea that we're just together is what is great. We might be doing different things and at different places, but that's, I think, what God so enjoys. I think He loves it when His church comes together. He loves it when His people come together. Where two or more of you are gathered, there I'll be. It almost sounds like, okay, the task is let's get two or people more together. But no, I think what Jesus is saying is, I love being a part. Man, if
Yeah.
just two of you get together, man, count me in.
Yeah.
I'm there.
Wow.
That's rest.
Yeah.
God is the one who brings Sabbath. It's not us creating it. It's not us doing it. God brings his part.
Yeah.
And what does he bring? He brings rest.
Wow.
He enters in and he brings rest. And when we can just receive that,
Yeah.
I think that's when we begin to understand how important Sabbath is. This Thursday night,
Yeah.
on the patio, Wednesday night at the prayer meeting, what are we doing? We're coming together and we're inviting the Lord. Well, what does the Lord bring? He brings rest.
Yeah.
Come unto me, all you who are weary and heavy laden. I'll give you what I've got.
Yeah.
Rest.
Yeah. Wow.
That's why I think it's so important. It's again, you asked the question before, why is this so hard? It's because we've got our minds wrapped around the think and do as to what this looks like.
Right.
How do we change that? Well, we change the wording. I have a dear friend who's a completed Jew, and every Sunday morning he greets me, Shabbat Shalom, which is the traditional, it's a reminder.
Yeah.
Shabbat, rest,
Wow.
Shalom, peace, peaceful rest.
Yeah.
That's what God brings.
Wow. So I realize this might be ironic asking this given the subject matter. If there was one practical takeaway that you could give to someone who's watching this video or who listened to the sermon from yesterday, what would that be?
Yeah, practical takeaways when we're talking about being and not doing. Yeah. So I think, I think the way that I would describe it is maybe to repose the question, how do we enter into a Sabbath? Not into the Sabbath, but into a Sabbath, into a time where we're connecting with God in a way that just means rest. I think that might be what you're asking.
Yeah.
There's two things that keep us from receiving from God. And when we talk about rest,
Yeah.
Shabbat, we're talking about receiving something from God. Not gaining it, earning it, supplying it ourselves, creating it, but we're just going to receive from God. Come unto me, leave where you are, and come to me. And so what does it take? And then he also says later on, by the way, in that same passage, Jesus said, do an exchange for your heavy burden, for my light burden, for my yoke is easy, it fits. So what does all that mean? Well, it means that I've got to leave where I am and go to him.
Yeah.
Come to me. And it means that in order to do that, I've got to do an exchange for my heavy burdens for one that is light or one that is manageable, his burden. I think there's two things that keep us from doing that. They're the same coin, but two different sides. They might sound completely opposite, but they're really the same coin. One is self-condemnation. Self-condemnation keeps us from the things of God like nothing else possibly can. Self-condemnation says, I am not worthy, and if you knew what I have done, or fill in the blank. And it stays away from God because we just don't believe that God could possibly give to us.
Yeah.
And so self-condemnation is something that has to be dealt with. And the bottom line is that God just doesn't make junk. He doesn't. And so the whole idea of, if Jesus has accepted me, if he is the one that has accepted me and delighted in me, rejoices over me with singing, the psalmist says, then what am I to do with my self-condemnation? Well, I have to give it up.
Yeah.
I have to exchange my heavy burden for one that is light. And what's the light? The fact that Jesus accepts me just the way I am. I don't understand it, and I don't have to.
Yeah.
I just have to receive it. The other side of that same coin is what we call self-sufficiency. Self-sufficiency is out of the church of Laodicea in the book of Revelations. I'm rich and have need of nothing.
Wow.
I have need of nothing. Both of these take Philippians 4:19. My God shall supply all your needs according to his riches in Christ Jesus. And it just completely destroys that scripture. The one, self-condemnation, says, God can't possibly meet my needs because of who I am. The other one says, I can meet all my needs and I don't need God.
Wow.
And this is a real need we have. This is a need that is created. In other words, the first thing that God did for Adam was say, come away and rest with me. It was a need that he created in Adam.
Yeah.
And so if we have this need, and we do, then to be able to say, my God is going to supply the need, and I am going to come to him. In a lot of ways, it doesn't sound practical, but in the world of the Spirit, it is very practical. Jesus said, come to me, leave where you are, and come to me, and do it my way. Take my yoke upon you. Exchange your heavy burden for my burden. What is that yoke? Trust and obey. Yeah. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So I think that practically speaking, we have to see that all of these things that go on in our life, whether it's the spiritual disciplines, reading the Word, praying, fellowshipping, being where we're supposed to be when God says we're supposed to be there, all of those things, well, that's one thing. But this isn't an exchange for those things. It's an add-on. I'm going to take time to rest with God. And again, I love that scripture. He gives to his beloved when? Even as they sleep. While we rest, God is pouring into us.
Wow. That's good. And I think the interesting thing is it's hard for us to lay down our yoke, whether it's pride or shame, like you described, or it's familiar and it's comfortable, and there's a fear of taking up that unknown, even though Jesus promises, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. So I think that's a really good introduction to the Sabbath, and I hope that it's something that we can all really dive into and really come away, not just with a head knowledge of Sabbath, but really this understanding and this experience of, wow, I learned what it means to experience the rest of God, not just the peace of God, not just the forgiveness of God, not just the love of God, but the rest of God.
And I think for parents particularly, how important this is to take time during this season to say, now this is our Sabbath season, so we're going to go do things that are fun.
Yeah.
And we're going to do it because it's the Sabbath.
Yeah.
Children begin to associate God with things that are, for them, the word might not be restful.
Yeah.
But fun. They're relational. They're doing things with mom and dad.
Right.
We're going to build something. We're going to do something together. We're going to play a game together.
Yeah.
Why? Because it's the Sabbath, and this is what we do.
Yeah.
We're going to turn off the television. We're going to turn off the computer, and we're going to be together. Why?
Yeah.
Well, this is the Sabbath. What a great... And when we can have a generation of people who begin to understand what the Sabbath really is again.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not specifically about what you're doing. It's more about we're being together.
We're being together.
Yeah, that's good. Well, thank you so much for taking a few minutes to dive a little bit deeper into your sermon from yesterday. Thank you so much for watching another episode. If you haven't watched or listened to Sunday's sermon, you can do that by going to our YouTube page or to our website, freedomnb.org. Thank you so much again for watching another episode. If you enjoyed this content, if you got something out of it, please hit that like button. If you want to be notified every week when a new episode comes out, hit that subscribe button and you'll be notified. And if you think somebody else would benefit from what we've been talking about, hit that share button. Go ahead and send it to a friend, a family member, a coworker, a relative, whoever it might be that you think would get a lot out of what we're talking about today. Thank you again, Pastor Dennis. Thank you again, those of you who are watching, and we'll see you again next week.
And don't forget Thursday night, where we begin our Sabbath with a great time on the patio of music and fellowship, along with Wednesday night, a special prayer meeting that is going to be dedicated to just preparation for the Sabbath.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks so much.